today on our webinar on pension policy at Crossroads. My name is Hank Kim, and I'm the Executive Director and Counsel for the National Conference on Public Employee Retirement System. Today's program is part of our Center for Online Learning. The purpose of the NCPERS Center for Online Learning is to provide remote continuing education to public pension trustees, staff, and other fiduciaries and stakeholders. In today's webinar, we will discuss the retirement policies of the two major party nominees for the President of the United States, namely Secretary Hillary Clinton and businessman Mr. Donald Trump. Presenting with me is Dr. Michael Kahn, NCPERS Director of Research. As always, we encourage you to submit written and comments. Written questions and comments may be submitted by using the GoToMeetings dashboard. However, in order to get through the presentation, we will hold all questions and comments till the end. We anticipate the prepared portion of today's webinar to be no more than 30 minutes. However, we will continue our normal webinar of an hour to allow for any questions that may be submitted. Additionally, today's presentation and any other supporting materials are available in the handout section of the dashboard. At the conclusion of this webinar, we will ask you to take a short 3-question survey. We highly encourage you to take a minute to take the survey as it informs our future webinar experience and sessions. So to begin our session, I just wanted to set the table, and before I turn it over to Michael, and in regard to the two major candidates and the media coverage and of information available to the electorate, unfortunately, this general election season has produced more heat than light. It has been dominated by personalities, style, and controversies rather than substance and defining the candidates regarding their positions on important issues. And as I stated, the media has had very little coverage on the issue specifically. And I don't necessarily fault the media for this. I think partially to blame is the media itself, but also the candidates. I think the two candidates, they are more likely to spar regarding the personality, style, and the controversies that they may create, rather than trying to talk in detail and in substance about the issues. But also, I think a big part of that is because they're trying to feed what the electorate, or some part of the electorate, wants, which is more of a conversation about the style versus substance. But for the rest of us who are interested in knowing what the candidates' positions are on the issues, it's been a very disappointing season thus far. Thus, NCPERS took the challenge of digging into the two candidates' records and statements to provide an outline on where they stand on the issue of pensions specifically and on retirement security generally. The research series, Pension Policy at a Crossroads, and this webinar is the culmination of this endeavor. So with that background, let me turn it over to Michael to talk in detail about what we were able to uncover regarding Mr. Trump and Secretary Clinton. Michael?
Thank you, Hank. It is indeed a pleasure and honor to share with you our research series, Pension Policy at a Crossroads. Before I begin, I should acknowledge that this series is based on a secondary research. To begin with, the lifetime guarantee of a pension that American workers once enjoyed was the envy of the world. But today, security and dignity in retirement is being replaced by do-it-yourself savings plans such as 401k. In a way, we face a self-inflicted retirement savings crisis because of the massive shift from the lifetime guarantee of defined benefit pensions to do-it-yourself 401k type defined contribution plans. Imagine there was no shift, and you could see the savings actually would have been twice as much as they are today. For example, on the last bullet on the slide you're looking at, the combined defined benefit plus defined contribution plan savings currently are about 6.9 trillion. If everybody stayed in defined benefit, there was no defined contribution shift during the last 30 years, we would have almost $14 trillion in retirement savings. So it seems.
Hey, Michael, let me interject real quickly there. I think part of that is certainly because defined benefit, it's a mandatory, it's a mandatory system that you cannot opt out of, whereas the defined contribution, it's voluntary, and therefore a lot of participants who can take advantage of it choose not to. And then there is also the drag of not being savvy investors and the fees and other inefficiencies built into the deep defined contribution 401k style system. Correct?
That is correct. Also, the performance, if you look at various data sets, the performance in defined benefit plans have been more superior or better than the defined contribution accumulation rates. So performance is another factor on top of what you just said. And here is a slide which actually shows the performance trend if that was applied to the defined, the whole defined benefit plus defined contribution plan. And let me explain. The blue line is the current growth rate of the accumulation in retirement savings, which is defined benefit plus defined contribution plan. So the top line, which is sort of red, is the assumption that everybody was in defined benefit plan and their assets grew at the rate they were growing for defined benefit plan. So we put all the DC people back into DB, and the assets grew to about 13.9 trillion, which is twice as much as it is currently. So in a way, this phenomena has sort of created the retirement income security crisis during these last 30 years. So we are at. I should also mention that this shift not only created retirement income security crisis, but it has also a broader societal consequences for everybody, not only those who have pension, but for everyone in society. Our research in the past we have done at NCPERS shows that the shift from DB to DC plans has actually increased income inequality over the last 30 years also. And somebody might say, well, what's wrong with rising income inequality? What's wrong is because it slows down the economy. It makes the economy sluggish. And on top of that, we also find that this shift from DB to DC has a very close, very strong, significant relationship between shift to DC and economic volatility. So all these things combine, rising income inequality, drag on the economy, rising volatility in the economies. That's not a good news for our society, for our well-being in the future. So now we are at a crossroads, and we are about to elect a new president, and which direction is pension policy likely to move under each president. And, you know, nobody can say for sure, but based on our secondary research, we might get some clues. So we can examine what actions these candidates have taken or what they have said in the past. So based on their actions and ideas, we could get some clues about the direction they might move. So next slide. Let's first look at Donald Trump. And as I said, my research basically was digging out what's published out there. And one of the items there is that, you know, Mr. Trump has a pension from Screen Actors Guild, where he actually played the shows that he had on television, including Apprentice and other things. But he, in his collectively bargained pensions of the employees at Taj Mahal, they are still actually not paid. And in fact, in a Delaware bankruptcy court, Kevin Gross in 2014 denied the request by Trump Entertainment Resorts to be relieved of the pension obligations. So those pension obligations continued and still not fulfilled. And I believe Taj Mahal is closing in October, its doors. And I've been actually trying to reach out to the local 54 who is representing the workers. They are still struggling with this issue. Hopefully go to Supreme Court one day to seek that. The third bullet point relates to a very early situation. Judge Charles Stewart, New York Southern District Court in 1991 found that Mr. Trump and his associates conspired to avoid paying pensions and welfare fund contributions by hiring immigrants to demolish buildings to make way for where Trump Tower is today. Trump Organization offers a 401k plan, and according to Bloomberg rating of 401k plans, a Trump plan scores 30 out of 100. I think there's only one other company in this evaluation which is less than that. Regarding Social Security, Trump has been on record on privatization. People should control their own account or partially privatized. So that's what we could find in the published sources, which are referred in the actual series if people want to look into that and look at some additional references. Next, please. So then we also looked at Hillary Clinton. Secretary Clinton has a long record. Of course, she ran in 2008, and some statements were made during that time. But generally, her recent statement on the Central States Pension Fund and information on her website shows that Hillary Clinton is sympathetic to the cause of worker pensions, and she believes pensions are earned and therefore should not be balked at. Secretary Clinton will promote retirement savings by providing a $1,000 matching tax credit for the first $1,000 in 401k deposit. So, you know, that's a 401k is an excellent supplemental savings plan, and this is to encourage savings through this kind of incentive. She states on her website, after working hard for years, Americans deserve a secure and comfortable retirement. Hillary will fight to protect retirement security, enhance, not privatize Social Security, and push back against any effort to undermine retirement benefits. So that's sort of generally the information we could scan or find through literature search. Next. So there's a little more detail in the actual series, but those were the highlights that we could find. In closing, I want to say that given the partisan divide in our country, it might be appropriate to close with a quote from Rumi. Rumi was a 12th century poet and philosopher, and he says, "I'm neither Zoroastrian nor Jewish, Christian nor Muslim. I am neither from this earth nor from the sky. I am neither from fire nor from wind." And he goes on and on disclaiming his affiliation with any religion or location. In the end, he says, "I am the soul of my love for the universe and humanity." And I might add to Rumi's thinking that when it comes to pensions, I am neither Republican nor Democrat because I have passion for preserving pensions and our society's economic well-being. So with that, I'll turn it back to Hank. Thank you so much for listening, and look forward to any conversation we have.
Great, thank you, Michael. So I just wanted to add a couple of finer points to what Michael was talking about. So, when Michael presented the draft of the research series and the point that was made on the last PowerPoint bullet on Donald Trump's slide, which said he was in favor of privatizing Social Security, I was somewhat surprised given some of his public rhetoric in terms of Social Security. To the extent that media has covered his positions, generally they've said that, that he's made statements favorable to Social Security. However, besides just saying that he supports Social Security, there is really nothing further that you can really find in terms of his position. And even when you go on to Trump's website and you look at the positions that he has, Social Security and retirement security is not one of the positions that's outlined on his website. And therefore, the only thing we can really turn to is the source that Michael turned to, which is one of the books that he's published. And again, if you look at the research series, there's a footnote. It's well annotated and footnoted, and the precise quote that he has in his book about privatizing Social Security is there. So, while during the election, the primary and the general, he's made some favorable statements about Social Security. Again, when you go to the website, you don't find anything, and therefore the only thing we can really turn to is what he said in the past. Versus Hillary Clinton, you go to her webpage, and one of the first things that you'll see in terms of her position is about Social Security and Medicare, and she has a enumerated points about Social Security that Michael's slide certainly underscore. And so we encourage all of you who are listening to go to the respective candidates' website and do your own research in terms of where the candidates stand on retirement security. Michael, so one of the questions we got was, you mentioned a couple of times secondary research. What's the significance of that, and can you just explain what it is?
In research, there are two ways. One is, and maybe three. One is really you collect your own data and then try to compile. So you are going to people and ask them directly, like polling. You go to people and ask the question, what's census data is primary data, census of government primary data, because they get directly by asking state and local governments, ask them to fill out a form, and then they compile the data, and the research based on primary sources of data that either you collect yourself or there's someone who collected it for you, but it comes from primary sources. In this situation, if I could have a chance to ask Donald Trump himself or Secretary Clinton herself, then that will be my primary research, which I am unable to do. The second method researchers use, because primary becomes harder and accessibility, the cost, the travel, and all that, it's called secondary research. Secondary research is based on information that's already, somebody has done some research, gathered, look at the court documents and came up with the information and published it. So it's coming from a secondary source, and you're relying on the truthfulness or accuracy of the secondary source. And of course, the third one is more like the newspaper people do, investigative, research, where you're investigating from one way or the other. You find out from whether it's legitimate sources or not very legitimate sources. So that's investigation, like FBI does investigation. But in the general research area, where being a researcher, I'm basically familiar with two main ways of doing research. One is primary research, and second one is secondary research. So this series is based on secondary research, and so we cannot guarantee, because we haven't done research ourselves, but we are relying on those who have published it. So that's why I call it secondary research. Hank?
Yes, thank you, Michael. So you did mention that in your presentation that Donald Trump is a participant in the Screen Actors Guild pension plan, and he draws a significant benefit from there. How about Secretary Clinton? I would imagine that she's also a participant in the government or the federal government plan, right? For her years in the Senate as well as her years in the State Department, she should be eligible for the federal government pension plan.
I think so, although I could not find any information on that particular subject. So you're right. Definitely, senators have a pension, and Secretary of State, I assume, has a pension also. So you're right. That's something I would say is true. Although
which might make them somewhat unique, as in sort of modern or recent presidential elections, where both candidates are pensioners or at least participants in currently open pension plans.
Yes, yeah, you're right, exactly.
I think that exhausts all the questions we have at this point. So let me thank you again for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again at the next NCPERS Center for Online Learning event, which is going to be talking about state initiatives for retirement security. As many of you may know, California recently enacted legislation to establish a secure choice pension plan. So they are definitely in the implementation stage, joining states like Oregon, Washington, Illinois, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, who have all begun state-sponsored plans for the private sector. And we'll be talking about that and the recent DOL regulations that made this possible. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you again on October 18th. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.